Hello, class. Welcome to my presentation on Japanese culture. I will foremost like to start this off with it's been an absolute pleasure, an absolute honor to sit and research and learn about this country. I am unfortunately an anime nerd, and I knew a little bit about the culture, but with me not having actually been to Japan itself, I can only speak and speculate on what I've seen and what I've heard from other people in the military and stuff like that. But I love Japan just based off of what I already knew about it, but having the chance to actually dig into their culture and to give me a really good chance to really learn more about the country, and I definitely appreciate it. But I would like to start us off with a interesting fact about Japan that I don't know a lot of people know about. But for over 2 centuries, Japan had cut itself off from the world, known as the time of the Sakaku period, and it literally means chained country. For whatever reason, the leader of the at the time, known as shoguns, or shoguns were a samurai class of warriors. They who were the military leaders of the country at the time decided to cut Japan off from the rest of the world based off of the looms of Christianity and the first Europeans coming into the country and saying Christianity, 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 and the shoguns felt that this was a breach to their power, that they didn't like how the influence was going. So they decided to ban all foreigners and to threaten execution to all citizens who venture out of the country. They kept one port of entry for trade, and from there everything else was for over 200 years, starting in the mid 1600s. For, for whatever reason, this was the way it went, and it didn't change for a long time. Um, that's for me. Like reading that, researching that, automatically kind of set the pace for me, like how crazy Japan's history is going to be, and I kept on going and seeing that it went all the way back from kind of like still rival like a lot of other countries' history of war, dark periods, enlightenment periods of how each country advanced and how each country got to where they are now. But enough about that. Um, just basic what I'm gonna be covering in this presentation is the food, culture, some music, and so much more. We also gonna get into geography of Japan, the language, the religion, and a lot of culture trends. So let's jump into it. First thing I want to cover is geography. The island itself, Japan itself, is consists of of thousands of islands, which total approximate 145,000 square miles. But there are four main islands that the citizens mainly reside on, which is Honshu. Forgive my pronunciation. I don't speak fluent Japanese, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. Hokkaido, Kuishi, and Shikoku. Those four main islands is where most of everything happens for the Japanese, like Tokyo, Nagasaki, all the major cities and stuff. Um, those four main islands are highly mountainous, so most of Japan's covered in either mountains or forest. They don't have no desert climate or anything like that. It's those pretty much those two climates with a lot of rain, a lot of snow, and humidity. The highest mountain in Japan is called Mount Fuji. That stands approximately 12,000 feet and is located on the main island of Honshu. Fuji is a dormant volcano, and the Japanese regard it as very sacred and part of their religion and stuff like that. Uh, as we continue going down, the country has a long history of tsunamis and volcanic activity. That's just based off of that Japan, right, is in the middle of the ocean and it sits on four different tectonic plates, and those constantly are moving, interlocking, and eventually one that all the pent up energy releases and causes tsunamis and causes earthquakes and unfortunately costs a lot of lives. Let's move on to I think everyone's probably favorite section of these presentations, the food. Japanese food is began to get really popular across the world, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows. First thing you think of Japanese culture is sushi. Sushi is a very dynamic and different type of food that I would say changed the world in some way or form because it's just a random thing like I want sushi, like because it just gives you that taste, that texture, and it's just amazing to have. But actual authentic sushi is so common in Japan. It's so fresh because the country is surrounded by ocean. They have a more opportunity for better tasting sushi with more true and fresher, authentic fish and crab and all thing that goes into fish. Um, it's not just sushi. They have tempura bowls. They have miso bowls. All of it. Like it's just Japan has so many different food options. So bao buns, and it's really really amazing. Um, and I mean just sushi and miso bowls. They also do just like how Chinese have orange chicken and teriyaki. They also have their own versions of these type of common foods that just really hit the spot. Uh, I covered about for food. As you can see in the pictures that I gathered up some miso bowl pictures that you can see like what authentic like it looks absolutely amazing with the eggs and the noodles and I'll just making me hungry right now. Moving on to the language of the Japan's language. They have a complex language derived from Chinese and Korean. It's due to this because Japanese has a lot of history between China and Japan, between them occupying and Chinese coming and occupying, and so it's just a lot of back and forth. But finally, the Japanese built their own writing system, and they broke it down into three different parts. One is the hiragana, excuse my pronunciation, katakana, and kanji. Um, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what kind of like kanji looks like as like the symbols that you see on Chinese and Japanese restaurants or books and stuff like that. So, um, the big thing about the language is they kind of pull the different words from the two different languages. Um, like using kind of kanji is like the base. The Japanese divides two syllabic alphabets, hiragana and katakana. Each kind of represents their own syllabus, and then certain words come from certain phrases, and that derives into hiragana and then derives into katakana. It's a complicated system that it takes a lot more research that I was able to find on. Um, but from growing up, children first learn the hiragana and katakana, and then as the years progress, they start to actually write in a kanji. Um, but one thing that is like there's not just Chinese and Korean that they pull from. If any people watch anime or been to Japan and listen, that they have, you can hear a lot of English based words into it too because they've incorporated a lot of English words into their language, and that's kind of the point of the different styles of words of hiragana and katakana. They pull in different words and phrases, and they combine it into their own culture. Um, Let me moving on. We're gonna go to cover the country's religions. The set religion, I'm gonna say the set religion, but it's Shinto or Shintoism. The basic of the religion is just they don't really center around a deity. They kind of nature, like they look at life and the flow of life and the beauty and just treat each other with respect, and you're gonna have I would say good karma and good life and good fortune, and that's just how they view like that percentage of the population view how they have their religion. Then you also have the Buddhists. When back in the mid centuries, they of course the Buddhists from China and India and stuff like that, they did make the way, and if that's some part of that religion stayed and rose, and so there's a large population of Buddhists in China and Japanese. Um, it's such a high population that they've built schools and shrines and temples all throughout Japan to commemorate the Buddhist religion, and they say, and it's a very honor to be able to be chosen as a monk to go to school for Buddhism. Islam and Christianity are present in Japan. They just, however, are a minority in Japan, and it's not to say like people don't practice it, but it's definitely a minority. And but part of like one thing that just amazed me is like Christmas, they kind of celebrate Christmas in a way. It's not the same as like we do in the States, where it's how hard like we actually believe in Christianity or whatever religion you believe in and stuff like that. But they kind of use it as a chances like, okay, cool, I'll go buy something and give it to a friend. They kind of just take the meaning of Christmas and, like, I want to buy a gift for my friend and I want to go spend some time with them. And sometimes it's also a tradition for them to go visit stores and to see Christmas trees and Santa Clauses, because they just find it just part of the holiday tradition for them. It's not necessarily the religion part aspect for them. It's just tradition, just to go do these things. Moving on to the history of Japan. Um, Japan has a long history, and from all the way from thousands of years ago. But one thing that like amazed me is like how almost every country, like I'm based off of Britain in Europe, how they raised warriors as knights. You was an esteemed knight that you went and fought for good and fought for the country and fought for the king. In Japan, they raised samurais who were known as like the peacekeepers and to fight for the good and stuff like that. And these led to, unfortunately, like with any uh cultures, is that you have bad people who want to use that for power, and so that they bad people rose to power and caused death and caused destruction and caused warfare throughout Japan. But it wasn't all bad. Like some of these samurais who became known as shoguns, who were the leaders of the samurai shoguns and shogunettes, they were actually good and did some good and tried to lead and lead the country. Uh, Japan has so much more to offer. Just that they literally, it's hard to describe. If you look at the slide and show like the anime, like Japan has so much culture, so much to offer, so much technology. And I don't want to say it's like because of after World War II, but like after World War II, Japan kind of not gonna say went 180. Like they was war, but then they just became peace and focused on schooling, education, culture, food. They kind of just and technology. That's why Japan is so much more advanced technology, to subway systems, to robots walking around, to literally it's so much more in Japan that they advanced on versus paying money for military budgets and that type of stuff. They just focused on them and the citizens, and which leads to them being such a esteemed country now. And I just want to take a look at the pictures and take time of like how this culture of education and has also risen to such a prominent culture of anime, and like to travel thousands of miles across the country to receive here, you know, not just here, Europe, China. Like this is an enterprise. Anime and J-pop has become so popular in other places that it's really a part of their budget, part of their plan, like for tourism. Like people come to the country, their first spots they're looking for is not just the religions, not just the beautiful sights. It is anime, the studios, the what people see on TV that they want to go see, and the common things of like people eating like anime, like you see people say arigato and stuff like that, like thank you, and all the common phrases you want to see that, and so people literally go to restaurants to experience how what they see in the animes. And but it's not just the animes that have to offer, it's still the technology and the more advancement. I also included just some basic pictures of like the shoguns and how they was in history and time, and also included just the basic facts of how eccentric anime is part of the culture along with the food. And but I guess that's enough about going on about anime. I'm an anime nerd. I could talk about this for days, but I just there's just so much more to the country for that. Uh, I like to lead into the conclusion of how what we talked about. We talked about the geography of Japan, its main islands. We talked about the religion and their language, of where the language came from, how it kind of derives. Of course, so much more complicated, so much more details to it. Same with the religion, and then we go into about kind of the culture and the history of themselves of how they got to where they are now, from war and from peace and thinking like, and the religion honestly is like it kind of goes into play of like peace and flow of life and nature, that kind of describes how Japanese people are today. It's just peaceful and very polite and nice. Like you've never seen like, I would just real quick story. When I was in England, it was a Japanese foreign exchange student. This man, he had sat in our booth and he doesn't know how to say excuse me, can I get out the booth. It was just so common, like, and he explained it to us that Japanese people are so polite and so political, try to be correct and stuff like that, like it's found rude for him trying to say excuse me if he's in the middle of the booth. It's so common that Japanese people kind of think about each other and consider each other. So it would have been very like promptness if one person asked like, "Yo, do you need to get out the booth?" And then he's like, "Yeah, I need to get out the booth." And so I can't wait to visit Japan. I know I'm gonna learn so much more than what I was able to find on the internet and between my uh, own little hobbies of watching anime and from when I going out to smaller Japanese culture events in the States. This has been my presentation. Um, Thank you for listening. I know it was a little scattered, but there's just so much to it. Thank you.